Hi, I'm Charles Edel, the Australia Chair here at CSIS, and I'm delighted to welcome you back to another edition of Pacific Policy Pulse. Today I'm here with Professor Rory Medcalf, the head of college for the National Security College at the Australian National University, well-known author, and it's great to have you here with us, Rory. Look, you were telling me just earlier that you haven't been in DC since 2018. What's changed the most? What are you looking for on your trip here?
Look, Charlie, it's great to be here. It's great to be back. It's been too long. I guess pre-COVID, I used to get here every 6 months or so, but I've kind of lost that rhythm. So it's great to be back. But why am I here now? It is to take the pulse, consistent with the name of this format, but it is to take the pulse of the foreign and security policy debate in the United States in this election year. There's obviously a huge amount of interest and uncertainty in Australia looking at that. It's also, I guess, to help friends in the United States understand where Australia's coming from on strategic and policy issues, to offer an independent voice on those issues. And maybe it's also to have a bit of a walk in the snow. It's January. So it's great to be back, but it really is about getting some ground truth.
Gotcha. Well, listen, you wear a lot of different hats in Australia. You're head of college. You're convener of members of parliament, you're a well-noted author, but also you have a regular or semi-regular column in the newspapers too. So as you draw on all the different strands of Australian foreign policy, what's top of mind for 2024 in Canberra?
So, great question. Look, I think top of mind is and probably should be building cohesive national security policy. Now that doesn't necessarily mean we'll see a formal national security strategy, something I've been arguing for, advocating for in Australia.
And which you talked about here in a podcast that we did together.
Indeed, recommended listening. But I think there is a sense in Australia that there's too much uncertainty, that our strategic policy is pulling us one way, our economic policy is pulling us a different way, concerns about social cohesion, concerns about cost of living, a recognition that we're in this confronting international environment, but a certain degree of caution on the part of government about how we articulate that. So I guess I see a huge challenge for Australia this year is about bringing that narrative together in practical ways that really set priorities for policy. There's some priorities already, AUKUS obviously one of them, and also positioning Australia in this world where we've got conflicts raging in Europe and in the Middle East, where we've got continuing deep concern about Chinese coercion in the region, and where really our interests outweigh our capabilities. So it's a really big challenge ahead. You mentioned the work we do with parliamentarians, and I think one of my, missions there is to help build a sense of shared national security literacy across the Australian political spectrum, precisely so we can move closer to that sense of consensus.
Final question for you, Rory. Not only are you a writer, but you're also a reader. Long plane ride, what are you reading on the way home?
So I have become really interested in reading biography in my middle age, or this stage of life. And I didn't used to be a fan of political biography, but now that I'm teaching a course on leadership at the National Security College, it's become kind of the natural thing to read. So I've become a bit of an Abraham Lincoln junkie at this stage of life, coming a bit late to that party. So I've got a Lincoln biography, but I'm also reading a biography of someone who many of your listeners may not know about. That's Gustav Mannerheim, the former, the founding leader of Finland. If you're looking at small nations seeking to protect their interests in a hostile world, he's a leader that bears watching. And then finally, a little bit of, if you like, local detail as well. Not something for the plane ride, but recommending for your listeners and viewers to understand Australia and its region. Recent book on the Solomon Islands, actually, by an Australian journalist. I think it's called Divided Isles, and only published in Australia, but really recommended reading because it looks at the on-the-ground politics of how Solomon Islands moved towards its switch to recognition of China and moved towards the alignment with China that's troubling us all. And it's great to read something that actually gets to the human level of reality there. Lots of fiction too, and I get time because I also think that those of us who work in strategic analysis need to keep our imaginations alive. But maybe that's for another podcast or another discussion.
Spot on. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Rory.
My pleasure.